Well, I'm grumpy again. And what am I grumpy about this time? Well, you might be wondering. Well, I think it's fair to say that mainstream doctors and medical researchers are prejudiced against medicinal plants. Many doctors are not trained in herbal medicine, and most, in fact, and therefore they don't have a good understanding of their complexities or how herbs might work and their potential benefits. And they tend to view herbs as inferior, ineffective, and certainly dangerous. Some see the use of medicinal plants as unscientific or exotic, or even as a product of extremist attitudes towards health and medicine. Not surprisingly, and perhaps paradoxically, because they believe herbs don't have any beneficial activity in the body and are largely inert, they're prepared to believe the worst when a herb is implicated in causing harm. And this prejudicial stance is fed by medical news feeds and the top journal press releases that tend to feature studies that implicate harms from herbs while burying or ignoring the abundant and many more studies that show a benefit. So when someone taking a herb develops a health problem, it's all too easy for their doctors and indeed the media to play the game that I'm so grumpy about. And this game is none other than blame the herb. So let's all play blame the herb. So I've got two stark, I believe, examples for you. And note, I'm only talking about part one because there are so many examples of this. I'm going to be talking about this recent incident with white mulberry. White mulberry leaf is a treatment for type 2 diabetes, among other things. Morris alba, and of course St. John's wort. And St. John's wort always gets stick from the media and indeed elements of the medical profession. So let's start by talking about this really curious incident that happened with white mulberry leaf. So it was attributed to the death of the wife of a US House of Representatives member, Tom McClintock. And what's more, it went into the coroner's report. So Loretta McClintock died in 2021 at the age of 61. But it wasn't until several months later that Kaiser Health News broke the story that Mrs. McClintock passed away after ingesting white mulberry leaf. Now, this revelation was widely reported in national and international media. You might not have come across it. But anyway, and the attribution was that she died of dehydration as a result of gastroenteritis caused by white mulberry leaf. So any of us who know about herbs and indeed know specifically about Morris alba, white mulberry leaf, would be left scratching their heads because this is a harmless, non-toxic medicinal plant. So here's the article that appeared in Kaiser Health News. And the article was written by Samantha Young, as you can see, the article to the left. And in that article, Samantha Young quotes Dr. de Michel Dupre, a retired forensic pathologist and former medical examiner in South Carolina, who reviewed the documents and commented that white mulberry leaves do tend to cause dehydration. Well, not in my world. And part of the uses and that's why some people use it to help lose weight, mostly through fluid loss. Well, again, not in my world. That's not what it's used for at all. It's mainly used for blood sugar regulation and is useful in type 2 diabetes. And there's no robust evidence to suggest it's a diuretic, and certainly not to the extent it can cause dehydration. So after this article in Kaiser Health News, it was picked up by media around the world. And as you can see from this article, a woman died after taking a herbal supplement touted for weight loss, diabetes, and cholesterol. And there are many, many other examples of this. So the American Herbal Pharmacopoeia obviously concerned about the implications of this and the negative press, which tarnishes herbal medicine in general and anyone who's giving herbs professionally as well as part of a therapeutic advice. Got together an expert panel to analyze the data and the coroner's conclusions, because the coroner did attribute the death to white mulberry leaf. And the key points of their rebuttal was that there's no evidence in either traditional or modern literature to suggest that white mulberry leaf has the potential to have caused this unfortunate event. And if you look at the pharmacovigilance data, where adverse reactions are reported worldwide, there's no indication at all of any toxic potential regarding white mulberry leaf. There's no indication that the coroner's office followed any formal mechanism for assigning causality. They found a fragment of mulberry leaf apparently in her stomach, but independent botanical experts indicate that a definitive identity of a small leaf fragment that's been soaked in stomach fluids cannot be made. I think they probably knew that she was taking mulberry leaf and made that association, but certainly the fragment in her stomach, it wasn't necessarily mulberry leaf. And experts in Chinese herbal medicine, where this herb is mainly used, conventional medicine, integrative medicine, pharmacology, and toxicology concur that there is nothing in the available autopsy reports or historical or scientific literature that could suggest that white mulberry leaf was either causative or contributing to this event. Now, this is a tragedy for two reasons. The first is that it unnecessarily tarnishes herbal medicine. But the second is that the real cause of this unfortunate death hasn't been found, because the coroner played blame the herb. Now, to her credit, the journalist Samantha Young did publish a follow-up article pointing out that experts were questioning the role of the white mulberry leaf in the death of the congressman's wife. And she quoted and said, and the quote from her article is, "Scientists, doctors, and pathologists are questioning the Sacramento County coroner's conclusion that Laurie McClintock's death was related to white mulberry, a plant that's been used as a herbal remedy for centuries, and one that even the coroner's botanical consultant called non-toxic in a letter to the coroner's office." So that's the white mulberry story. Let's now look at something that was published a few years earlier, linking St. John's wort to psychosis. And you see this is an Australian medical newsletter, and it talks about the recent publication of a case of a man who developed his first episode of psychosis following a course of St. John's wort. And you see this article that was published in the Daily Mail News that talked about this case of a man suffered psychotic episodes after drinking 4 cups of St. John's wort laced herbal tea. I love the way journalists use this provocative language. It was laced with St. John's wort, and believed that people could read his mind. He was an Italian man who was hospitalized suffering delusions and paranoid thoughts. He'd self-medicated for months with a tea made from St. John's wort, and the doctors could not rule out a link. So it's a kind of a double, a negative statement. They couldn't rule out a link between his psychosis and the herb. And there is a past case, so of course it must be true. Let's play blame the herb. And here's the paper that was published, this Italian paper. And you note the title, St. John's wort hypericum perforatum induced psychosis, a case report. So there's absolutely no question. It's not possible St. John's wort induced psychosis, a case report. It's St. John's wort. But look at what they say in their discussion. Firstly, the lack of detailed information on the composition of the St. John's wort tea taken by a patient was suspected to cause, should be acknowledged as a limitation. This is true of many, many adverse reaction reports on herbs. They don't even look at what the person was taking. I mean, not even look at it. Hey, bring in what you're taking and we'll identify it as St. John's wort, or at least read the label. They don't even bother. They take the anecdotal report from the patient. That's the very basic thing they should do, but then they should analyze it. They should validate and analyze and make sure it was St. John's wort. Make sure it wasn't contaminated. I mean, we've had a recent example in Australia of salad leaves that were contaminated with a psychoactive plant, and grossly contaminated, I might say, given the symptoms that people experienced. But no, they didn't do that. What they go on to say is, moreover, it's not possible to establish a definitive causal link regarding the onset of a psychotic episode. However, we can hypothesize that in this young and vulnerable individual with a known genetic predisposition and a previous drug-induced psychotic episode, that St. John's wort could have played a determinant role in the onset. So, given all that, here's a more likely scenario. This is a person who is prone to psychosis, has been struggling with it, who starts experiencing psychotic episodes, reads somewhere that St. John's wort might help, and starts taking it. That is equally plausible based on this discussion, and indeed, if you look at the details of the case. In no way was this conclusively proven. And yet, look at the title of the paper and look at the press that followed. And I can tell you right now, I'm absolutely certain that St. John's wort, especially as a herbal tea, is not going to cause psychosis. So thank you for listening to my grump. And that's what being grumpy does to you. That's what I'm beginning to look like. So I need to go. I know. I'll go out and take some St. John's wort because it will probably help my grumpiness, not make me worse. Thank you.